Good morning, everybody. Morning, back row. There you go. Just a couple of things that I wanted to remind you that we're doing prayer in here about 15 minutes prior to every Tuesday, or what day is it? Wednesday. That's it. And that would be great if you want to come and you see us up at the front. Dave and I and some others come and feel free to join us, and that would be awesome. We really want you to feel like you can do that. Where is my bestest buddy this week? There she is. A little round of applause. This is the one who got all the pressure this week.
All the pressure.
All the pressure.
Good morning, everyone. So Stampede Barbecue is 2 days away, and if you've checked the forecast, the tradition of us just dying of heat is looks like it's going to be continued this year. So that should be great.
32 degrees.
But this year, I'm fixing the problem by getting a dunk tank. So if you want to cool off, you can hop on in at any time. Yeah, so we've got some great VIPs coming. We've got a lot. Yes, Bill?
Is Donald going in the dunk tank?
He hasn't agreed, but Terry is all over it. So.
Okay. No, I have the MC.
Bill could go in the dunk tank if you guys put enough pressure on him. Anyway, I'll get this announcement moving. So basically just a reminder that, parking is going to be an issue. No parking anywhere on the Seed campus unless, of course, you have a parkade spot. So just please take transit, or if you have a parkade spot further away, that's fine. And just really, I would love if everyone's willing to just kind of jump in and help. A lot of people have signed up to be volunteers, but even if you're not, just pop on out at any time during the day and just see if we need anything. People might not show up. There might be something we missed. Facilities is going to be here bright and early, setting up all the tables and tents. So if you want to jump in with that or help just clearing tables throughout the day, that would be amazing. And it also looks really great for the Seed staff to be really jumping in, wearing t-shirts and cleaning up. So yeah, just come on out, bring your family and friends. It's going to be an amazing day. Thanks.
And the legendary Chris from Edmonton is going to introduce our speaker this morning, I think. Legendary Chris.
The legendary Chris, thanks, Bill.
There you go.
Well, good morning, Calgary and Red Deer. And I need to start off by wishing, for those of you who are of American descent, which I am intimately familiar with, as my wife is down in the U.S. right now, happy 4th of July for all our American friends and relatives. Because I know there's a few of us on staff here. I'm here to introduce Snowy. Snowy and I go way back probably 15 years ago. I met Snowy in prison. I won't say why he was there. I'll let him share that story. But him and I have traveled a lot of roads, and our paths have continually connected. And just recently this year, he joined our chaplain team here at Mustard Seed. And so I want to introduce you the highly blessed Snowy Noble. Welcome. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Most blessed and highly favored is how you're supposed to introduce him. So Snowy's going to come up and he's going to speak to us today. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much for that great introduction, Chris. I am blessed and highly favored. To the colleagues down in Red Deer and Calgary, I long to meet with you at some point, but I'll talk to you while I'm talking to the folks here because it's easy to have a visible audience. I came across a quote by Max Planck. You probably don't know him. Maybe you know the quote by Wayne Dyer, but he's not the one who originated this. It says this: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. I came here to Canada in 1990. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. This is going to be my story to you because I think all of us have a story, and I'm hoping that what occurred in my journey is also occurring in yours, and maybe you don't get a sense of what it is that you truly are about, and you're still trying to discover that But wherever you are, it's okay, because you will be used by God and you will bring blessing to the people that you're called to. I was born the middle child of 5. Well, let me tell you why my name is called Snowy in the first place, because I know there's some curious people out here. I was born to a midwife delivery in the early 60s. And because my mother had some complications at birth, she needed to go to the hospital and be checked on. And I just went to the hospital because I needed food. But because I wasn't born in the hospital, I wasn't given a wristband where people could identify who's who. At feeding time, an interesting thing occurred. But here's what my mother tells me. My mother's now passed away, but she tells me this, it sounds almost legendary. When I was born, she noticed there was 3 things that were significant about me. First, I was male. Second, I had blonde hair. And thirdly, I was fair-skinned. I was like white. My mother's complexion is much darker than mine, and so therefore at the hospital, when the nurse was giving us out to our mothers to be fed, my color didn't match my mother's. So she just gave me to a white lady. And my mother received a female child with dark hair. That's as good as it could match the colors. But thankfully, my mother knew what I looked like and said, look, I don't have a girl. I have a son. That's him over there. Can you bring him back to me? And yeah, and then of course, I was returned to my real family. And then they tagged that nickname Snowy on me. It's been like that ever since. And that's the only way I knew Snow was through my name. I never came across Snow until I came to Canada, which is a whole different story altogether. Anyway, having said all of this, I grew up as a middle child. In fact, it was almost like 2 families within my family. We were 3 older siblings and 2 younger ones. The 3 older siblings kind of experienced life in a unit, and the 2 younger ones very different. Although there's just 2 years that separate me and my younger brother. At about age 9, my parents sent us off, the 3 older ones, to boarding school. That was the beginning of 9 years of residential school. And it wasn't all too bad, but I must say the first occasion of separation between me and my family was very devastating to me. I was 9 years old. I thought that they didn't want us. And so I decided in my small mind at that time to make the most of the place where I was. Because to be separated at that young age, I thought, when am I going to see them again? I was sent away for 4 months at a time. And every time I had that separation, I discovered that it was hurtful to try and hope to go back. So I made the most of every opportunity, and I began to engage with all people that I met. So you find me, as gregarious as I am, I meet people and I get to know them right away. Because it was formed right at that early age. In the political climate of the country I was raised in, we were a colony, historically a colony. We were called Rhodesia. Does anybody remember Rhodesia? Yeah, it was quite an interesting story because in 1965, when much of the African nations were becoming independent, the government, the prefect government of Rhodesia at the time, did not want to surrender the country back to the local population. And so they declared their own independence from the UK. And they became a rebel government for 15 years. And I grew up in that 15 years. Initially, it was kind of like there was a pushback from the local residents, the indigenous population. But that pushback began to escalate into a civil war. And it reached its peak about 1978, about a year before I graduated from high school. So we lived in this constant threat of there being, this could be your last year. And so that's kind of the climate we lived in. And then in 1980, there was a lot of conversations going on between the United Kingdom and the international community where they impressed upon the leaders at the time to hand the country back. And so Zimbabwe became independent in 1980. And from 1980 to 1990 was a time where I guess Zimbabwe was the most flourishing and the best place you could ever be on earth. And in that 10 years, lots of things occurred. I got married in 85, 84, I should say. And I got 2 children in that relationship. My wife and I and our kids came to Canada in 1990. They were 4.5 and 3 years old. So in the years leading up to between 1980 and 1990, I got a sense of a call. And I don't know if you pay attention to the things that God is saying to you, or if maybe you haven't yet identified the supreme being that's watching over you as God. Whoever it is that's in charge of you is interested in you, right? Intimately interested in you, so much so they'll disturb your life. They would. I was part of a music team. We used to call it a band back in those days, but these days you call them music teams. I was doing some rehearsals at my house, and one of the musicians, the keyboard player, he wanted to always take the lead and play all the good songs. And I said to him, hold on, brother, not all the songs are keyboard songs. You've got to give everybody else a chance. Why don't you just play in the background, and when it's your chance, you can shine. And then he turned to me and he said, who are you to tell me what to do? That question haunted me because, who was I? I was just another musician like him. So we managed to make it through that rehearsal that night, and that question plagued me for a long, long time. Time is moving on, but I'll get to the story eventually. I realized that I had no qualification or anything that would make me able to tell somebody else what to do. So I thought, what? One day when I get an education, I'm going to get a music education. So if you ask me that question, I'll say, this is who I am. I can do that. But it plagued me for a while. In about 1989, the opportunity came for me to work with Youth for Christ. I'm sure you've got Youth for Christ here in Canada, right? I worked there for a full year, and I found it was the most miserable time of ministry I ever experienced, because I felt unqualified and unfit for ministry. And it was during that year, 1989 to 1990, that I began to ask the question of God, like, what do you want from me? What do you need from me? Because I find I'm serving you in this ministry, and I'm not fulfilled at all. So we asked a lot of visiting missionary teams that would come through there, how did you get involved in your ministry? Most of them came from the United States, and a couple from Canada, but they all came from overseas. And the common response I got from them was, we went to Bible school, we had some preparation and education for what we're doing now. So I thought, Bible school. I was, in 1989, I was about 26 years old. I was young. But old when it comes to going back to school. I thought, I can go back to school, that's just too much. But the more I heard that, and the more discontent I was in my particular situation, I felt that I better make some plans. And so we began to apply to Bible schools overseas. The U.S. had very strict requirements about us getting in there. Canada seemed a much better place because Zimbabwe and Canada were both members of the Commonwealth. And so I could get in just on a visa. But this is the visa. So I made an application to a little Bible college down here in Three Hills. Was accepted and made plans to leave. So we left in May of 1990. Family and I traveled all the way here, 7 suitcases and a guitar and $800 in our pocket. We were coming to Bible school for 4 years. Yeah, I know, there's a shock in your faces. Yeah. But it gets even more interesting because we arrived in May, and school was going to start in September of that year. And at September, registration occurred, and so we went through all the different lines. I'm new to the Canadian schooling system. And so they said, you've got to register for your classes, you've got to choose a subject you're going to do. And while I was trying to choose my classes, somebody asked me, are you a foreigner? I said, yes, I am. They said, well, you can't register for any of your classes until you go to the other door over there. I said, what's that door? They say, that's where you show them your student visa. I said, oh, what? A student visa? I didn't have a student visa. I traveled 10,000 miles with my family. We left everything behind. And this one thing we didn't have was a student visa, and I couldn't study. And so for 1 full year, I didn't have the opportunity to study at all. We had to make ends meet somehow. My wife thankfully got small babysitting jobs, and I helped where I could, but I wasn't even on campus to work in school setting. So we actually lived by faith, trusting in the people that God brought to us. Every morning we'd wake up and we'd go to the door and there was a loaf of bread or something on the door. Somebody fed us. We don't know who they were, but God took care of us through those times. And I was so grateful for that because my fledgling faith began to flex stronger because I kept saying to the Lord, so you brought me here. What am I going to do? I can't even go to school. And yet I felt strongly that this is what I needed to do. But in the midst of all of those questions, there was something working in the background because the church sponsored our first year of education. They paid for our first full year. And also, I applied to get a visa. And back in the day, we could only get a visa outside of Canada. We had to travel to the United States to pick up our visa. So we went to Minneapolis, Minnesota, picked up the visa there, and came back, and I started my first school year in 1991. Graduated in 1995. But my schooling years were very interesting because I was taking a class called what's it called? Field education. And the professor said, in order to put this stuff to work, you got to actually choose a place of ministry so you can see it work. So they had a list of different places you could put your name down so you can go practice this field education stuff. There was orphanages on the list. There was old folks' homes. There was even open air campaigners down in Calgary. You could share your gospel on the street. And the list went all the way down. And I kept saying, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can do that. And then there was just one left at the bottom. It was prison ministry. And I thought, oh, gee, I should have started there. There's nothing I can do in prison. What am I going to do? Because I thought prison had those people that were mean and were tired of life, and they just wanted to hurt somebody. That's who I thought was in prison. And I thought, oh, yeah. I signed up for it, went for the training, and it was my first entry into the Drumheller Institution. It was a Wednesday evening, and I went with my team of 5 or 6, and we were sitting in the chapel, and the announcement came over the microphone, over the loudspeaker, saying, "Move into chapel for Bible study." So we were sitting, the chairs were sitting in a circle, and I was waiting for those fellas to come in. The door opened, and I began to tense myself because I thought, like, how do you get out? That's the only door. They're coming in through there. And as they all walked in, they walked in with blue jeans, white T-shirt, and a name tag on their chest. And there was none of them that looked like that mean person that I thought would be there. In fact, I looked at them all and I thought, wow, that could be my neighbor. Oh, that could be my brother. Oh, that could be me. And they sat down and we talked. And as I had conversations with them, I realized that much of my fears were in my head. So, you know that quote that I read, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So I thought perhaps it's not what I should fear, it's about what I'm called to do. And I found that I could be of help. And so that was my very first introduction into prison ministry. From 1995 until I left in 2006, I was one of the chaplains at the institution, at the men's institution there. I had an opportunity to apply for a full-time position because I was only working part-time because I was a pastor of a church down in Rosebud. I had a chance to apply for a full-time position, and one showed up in Edmonton at the women's institution. So I applied, went for the interview, was successful, but I didn't tell my wife it was a woman's jail. I said, I got a full-time job. She was celebrating with me. And then during the conversation with somebody else, she says, "You didn't tell me that was a woman's jail." I said, I forgot to say that. We moved in 2006 and began our first, our journey of 12 years in Edmonton. And it was probably the most life-transforming thing for me because I realized that people who end up in jail are just people who, somewhere along the way, life didn't occur the way they have expected. Something happened to them. And their response to that made them make choices and decisions that put in the conflict of the law. And so when I worked here at the Women's Institution, I found that a lot of the stories were like that. So I came up with a particular saying, and I'll say this to anybody that I still meet. My role in your journey is to help you discover your purpose. Because if you don't discover your purpose, somebody else will use you for theirs. So we want to help you with that. And that's been my motto all the years that I've worked at the institution. It's been good. All of the ministry that I've done in that place was excellent. Except the last year. 2017 was the hardest year I ever had in any ministry ever. So much so that I was about to throw the towel in, I think. I was thinking, Lord, this is hard stuff. How on earth can a person cope? I was enjoying ministering to the people under my care, but the political system and the management system was starting to push against the things that are causing success in chaplaincy. So much so that I felt as though whatever I did, whichever direction I turned, I was hit against the wall. And I hit sort of a very hard point. Probably within a month or so of that kind of experience, I got a call from Chris. And Chris says to me, I know your contract's coming up to an end soon. Would you consider working at the mustard seed? I said, I could consider it. Because I always consider things. Yeah. But he actually impressed upon me again at a later meeting, and then later, about December of last year, he says, we have a need because one of our chaplains has moved on to a different calling, and we would like something to start in January. And he made me an offer I couldn't understand. At least I shouldn't say that. He made me an offer that I didn't feel I should refuse. And I said, look, I'll enter into the process. And I met the criteria and was accepted to work here in February of this year. I'm glad I joined your team here because I find it really affirming. It gave back to me the idea that I can still keep doing what I'm doing because God's called me to serve Him wherever He places me. And He's placed me here with you, and I will serve Him faithfully because I know as I look across the table here, there's people that are my colleagues. I don't know you all very well yet, but I'll get to know you. But also take advantage of the fact that somehow, God brought a person like me from Africa to walk beside you. So I don't know why He wants me to walk with you. Take advantage of that because He loves you. He really loves you very, very much. And over here in Calgary and Red Deer, at some point I'll get to meet with you. I've got 1 minute left. There's a quote, my favorite quote in the scripture. Isaiah 32 verse 8 says this, but he who is noble plans noble things, and on noble things he stands. I think God wrote that just for me. Okay. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to stop with this quote saying, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. God bless you. Thanks.